like booking big guests on this show.
Heck yeah.
And there is maybe no more interesting person in the state today. No, she's usually the most interesting person in the state, but especially today. We are joined by the athletic director of the UIL. It is Dr. Susan Elza. Hey, Doc, anything going on today?
It's been quiet. I hear there's some rumblings around the state about some stuff, but I can't imagine what it would be.
Yeah. Your phone's been pretty quiet. Just had it plugged in the other room.
You know what? It honestly, it's strangely quiet. Just as you release this thing. Mm-hmm. And then about 10 o'clock, they kind of start trickling in more text than phone calls. Mm-hmm. I think this afternoon we'll get, that's when people are going to call and ask why, mm-hmm. did you put us in this district? And they should, and they need to ask those questions. And hopefully we give them good answers.
Well, I want to ask you a little bit about what was different this year, because as we've been talking about, you guys use a software for the first time. Can you take people through maybe what sets this year's realignment apart from past years?
Well, let's just think about the way that, we broke tradition here at UIL, excuse me, and you had the maps and the pins, mm-hmm. and, we were manually putting, those pins, placing those pins on those maps for every school, 1,200 of them, over 1,200 of them, into a traditional road map. And that took weeks. I mean, you're talking 3 weeks. And you fast forward to 2017-18, and back in October when we captured those numbers, and we finally, made sure everyone's numbers were submitted correctly, and we get with our new mapping technology, with the service that was offered through Carter Jones, and they basically we give them a spreadsheet, if you will, and that shows this is all the schools in 6A. This is all the schools in 5A Division 1. This is all the schools. And they take that through their mapping software, and they drop all the pins into those maps for us. And that doesn't take but, I don't even want to say 5 minutes, but it doesn't, because they've got it all entered in there. So just the efficiency of it. And then the second piece of it is you got to think about when we're trying to make decisions on maps, there's a lot of travel burdened areas in this state. And in one scenario, if you move one school, it's a domino effect. It changes all. In the past, you were basically taking a rubber band off of there and then having to move all the other rubber bands as an effect. And on this mapping software, when you change something, you save that version of the map and then you changed it within the system. So you had all the options right there in front of you. And the ultimate thing is just the mileage piece, that it was running. It could run mileage for us as, not as the crow flies, but as a written, as a writing, what am I trying to spit out here? Somebody help me with the vocabulary. Yeah, driving time. The actual driving miles that would be on the path that they would actually drive to the venue. Mm-hmm. So I just, overall, I think that is exactly what our process needed. It was hard to move away from what we'd had in the past, but I do think that it made for a more productive realignment process.
And so I think this is an important point that I want to underline, is that in the end, this is still a UIL decision made by humans. That you guys will ultimately have the final say.
And I think Dr. brought up whenever he spoke on Fox Southwest on the realignment show, he made that point, and I think that's a great one to emphasize, because at the end of the day, this isn't a robot making these decisions, and the process is really the same. It's just more of a 21st century process. And a lot of people they don't realize when we're putting those boundaries on those districts, and basically placing the rubber bands, if you will, we're not looking at what school it is. We're looking to see what the distance is, and does it make sense geographically on a map. And that's before we run any mileage whatsoever. So the human element is absolutely important in this, and was, obviously very profound. There's no robots doing this.
We're talking with Dr. Susan Elza, the athletic director of the UIL here on Texas Football Today. Get involved in the conversation, #TF Today. All right, Doc, let's talk about the school that's been blowing up my Twitter mentions. And that's Angelo Central. And
okay.
I know that there is no real good solution for them. They are, as you said, I think the turn of phrase you used was travel burdened, which is
yes.
an excellent phrase that I'm going to steal and claim as my own.
And wait a minute, give that credit to Dr. Harrison, because that's where I stole it from.
Dr. Jamie Harrison gets the credit, and I'm just gonna take it from him then. All right, I want to ask you then what you do with a team like that, because obviously there are some San Angelo Central fans who are saying, why the heck are we in a DFW district? What do you say to them?
Well, I say to them that we did spend a lot of time, just going through every scenario, and we talk, the areas that are travel burdened in the state, the districts, we spend a lot of time talking to them and understanding what their challenges are, and there are no good solutions when it comes to that, and for them to go west or to go east, it's what I would call a conundrum. I mean, you have to make a decision on it. But what a lot of people don't realize is when we're running this mileage and us running them east as we did, it has a domino effect on the other districts as well. And so your best case scenario is not going to be the best case scenario for anyone involved, because there's going to be someone that says you could have done this and it would have been 200 miles less or 200 miles more. And we landed on sending them east was going to be the best bet for the number of schools that we're trying to accommodate, and to take away the travels. I guess, when you don't send them west, you're saving travel for those schools that are west. And when you do send them east, you're adding travel to someone. So I guess you split the difference, and we landed on what we felt like was the best mileage with them going east.
Another interesting kind of thing that I've taken away from Alliance this year is the regions, is that there are some interesting movement among regions. We've had teams moving from Region 4 to Region 2. We've got a school district that is now split into two different regions. When you talk about in Cypress.
Is that fair?
Yeah. Can you take us through the process of deciding who goes in what number district? Because I think that's something fans may not necessarily understand.
Well, the first thing you do is you draw the boundaries on the districts that you determine, and then you run all the mileage. You're not worried about the regions at that point. But when you do finally reach the regions, and I know I had looked on my Twitter account, and a lot of times people just send you messages publicly, and they were asking why did we number it this way? But you're really, in the old days, let's think about this, when there was more schools out in West Texas, and you traditionally could look at a map and it was divided into 1 and 2 at the top and 3 and 4 at the bottom. But as our state has changed, and when let's talk about 6A football for instance, then you're somebody that would traditionally in the past, let's say in the past 10 years or more, that would have been an easy boundary for 35 to say this side's Region 1 and this side's Region 2. Those days are out the window. So we just try to keep them where it is. When you're looking at it, the top 2 are 1 and 2, and the bottom 2 are 3 and 4. But sometimes they just kind of bleed over into each other, if you will.
I want to ask you another thing new this year is, of course, the 5A split, that we are splitting 5A into Division 1 and Division 2. What can you tell us about maybe the how do I want to put this? The intricacies of how you put together something like that for the first time, which is obviously going to be a bit of a shock to the system.
Well, it is a shock to the system, and it's a shock to the system if you're you got to think about it. My first realignment as athletic director was we were just 5A was 5A. It wasn't in a split conference. So when you were trying to pull those schools together, and again, remember, we don't look at names so much. We're just trying to group them as maps. We know how many schools that we have to have. It's 16 districts in Division 1, 16 in Division 2. So you're trying to group them based on, the math on that. And then, I know that because I spent so many years in the DFW area, 23, I know where every school is up there. And so when you were kind of lassoing those in, you were thinking, well, I'll just lasso this school in. And you're looking and you're like, okay, where are they? And they're D2. So it's a completely different process. I'll tell you something to me that stood out was the fact that, when you have 4A split conference, you don't have, except in Houston, you don't have a lot of multi-school districts. Houston ISD has, some schools that are 4A. You don't have a ton of multi-school districts. But when you get to 5A, you've got a lot of multi-school districts in there. And the opt-ups make a difference. We had 21 choose to opt up to D1, from D2 to D1. Some of those opted up, but they were already D1, because they didn't know what our cutoff numbers were. But in that total, we ended up with 15 that went up that would have been in D2 had they not. And I think that was something that was a little bit different. It can affect your cutoff number. And I think that was something that was a little bit different that, we had anticipated it, but it's hard to predict how many schools are going to opt up. And I think that that's something that we need to, continue to look at as we go into, in 2 more years, go back into the realignment process.
We're talking with Dr. Susan Elza, the UIL Athletic Director here on Texas Football Today. Get involved in the conversation, #TF Today. Dr. Elza, another thing that stood out to me is we have a bigger proliferation of 4-team districts at the 11-man level. We've got, in fact, 7 of them. 7 teams that, if they field a team through Week 11, then they will make the playoffs regardless. Is there a rhyme and reason to that, or is that just kind of the way things shook out?
It's the way things. I mean, when you think about it, okay. So let's say 4A. I had seen one on Twitter that it was kind of questioning why we had one district the way it was. But in 4A, Division II, when you do the math, you've got 90 schools in 4A Division II. When you do the math and divide it by the 16 districts, it's gonna shake out to about 5 teams per district. Mm-hmm. But what I will say to that is, and this is the beauty of that mapping system, is because we could put every map online. I would like everybody to look at those maps, because the one scenario that I had seen a Twitter feed on was, why did we do this? And when I looked at that map, it tells you exactly why we did it. Because why would we make another school just to make a 5-team district in that scenario? Why would we make a school travel, maybe 200 or 300 miles just to have a 5-team district? And I think that's what I'll encourage everyone, because they're going to have opinions, and they dang sure should. And I don't ever want to, I pass no judgment on that whatsoever, because these are tough decisions that we make. But I do want people to take the time, since we have them posted on the website, to look at the maps. I think it explains a lot when it comes right down to it.
Finally, Dr. Elza, I know you're very busy, but I want to ask you, was there anything that throughout the course of this process that surprised you? I know that you are now we can call you a veteran of this realignment game. Was there anything there that surprised you?
Well, let's make sure we know who the veteran here is. It's Dr. Braddock. Yeah. And Dr. Harrison has 7 years on me, and Dr. Cousins has, probably almost as many as Dr. Braddock. But, I'm still amazed at how tough some of these decisions are. I mean, and because that it's, when you're asking a school to travel a long way and to make these decisions, the either ors always surprise me too, because you can very easily put them in this district or that district. And they both make sense. And how you finally have to land on a decision, and we really try to make the most of our decisions based on, travel mileage. But there are some of them, when you get in those metroplex areas, you're making it on travel time. That's another unique offering of that mapping system that we have, is that it can calculate time based on the time of day you're going to travel. But it's I don't it's not an easy task. It takes months to get to this point. We're so glad when this day releases, when the release is here, and we are so glad when we don't get a phone call saying you left our school out. That's another one.
Yeah, I imagine that's probably fear number one.
Oh, hey, I want you to throw some love to, our technology department, Dr. Jones, who oversees that department, and Kevin Johnson, who is in charge of it. But I don't think we had a website crash today. Have y'all heard of any?
I was actually, we were going to mention that in the next segment about how it's kind of amazing. It's the first time I think that's ever happened.
Believe me, and that was no easy task, because I think, I saw somebody who said something about you need to increase your bandwidth and all this. I mean, everybody has that, and I don't know. I can't tell you. I'm not a technology person as far as the nuts and bolts of it, but I know we spent a lot of time just making sure that our schools could access it. I mean, that part's been a challenge, and today was our day, and I don't. For us, that is a huge triumph, because that is something that everybody, they dog us on.
Yes, myself included. I dog you on it as well.
As you should.
She is Dr. Susan Elza. She is the UIL Athletic Director. Send your very thoughtfully crafted tweets to her at UIL_AD. Dr. Elza, I really appreciate your time. I know you're busy. I guess congratulations on another realignment, and let's do this again in 2 years.
That sounds good. Appreciate the time.